Hello and welcome in to Addison, the 35th podcast, your Chicago baseball authority, brought to you by the good folks at Just Baseball. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the hat, you see the nice trucker style hat of Just Baseball. Go and get yourself one right now over at their merch store. But first, we got to talk about the Chicago White Sox winning their first series of the year. Let's go. The Chicago White Sox take down the Bo Sox 2-3 in a weekend set here in Chicago. I am recording this here on Sunday, so I'm still kind of hyped about the White Sox taking 2 out of 3, even though they lost on Sunday. Firstly, let's get to where and how you can follow me. I am Herb Lawrence. I am the host, one of the hosts of Addison, the 35th podcast. The other host is Ryan Herrera, who does the Cubs stuff. I do the White Sox stuff. And if you're very interested in what the Cubs are doing, and we just had some news that their left-handed starter, Justin Steele, will be out for the season with elbow surgery, you need to check out Ryan Herrera and his coverage of that story and what the Cubs will be doing. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell so you can never miss a moment of Addison the 35th podcast. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, what have you, definitely hit the subscribe and tell a friend about what's going on here at Addison the 35th because we got Chicago baseball covered for you. But let's take care of what happened this weekend in Chicago, as I came into the weekend thinking that the Boston Red Sox were going to destroy the White Sox. The White Sox had come into this series losing 8 in a row, having looked bad in both Detroit and Cleveland and looking very woeful. No, Boston came in 7-7. Their announcers were even talking about, man, we're about to get right against the White Sox. This is the perfect time for us to go to Chicago and face that badass team. Really, they said it. Dave O'Brien, I'm paraphrasing, said it on the air. And same thing with Will Meidroth, the former Boston Red Sox third baseman, who is now a contributor for their Nesson broadcast, said as much on Twitter. Both of them had to eat crow this weekend because on Friday, the Chicago White Sox came out and dog walked the Boston Red Sox. It seemed like one of the teams was coming off 8 losses in a row and the other was coming in to whoop some ass, and they switched roles. As the White Sox took no prisoners on Friday, they won 11-1 versus the Boston Red Sox. Great pitching performance by Davis Martin. Let's start with that right there. Davis Martin went 6 innings, gave up 6 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, and struck out 6. 63 of his 89 pitches were thrown for strikes. He now has a ERA after 3 starts of 4.24. And the main story of this whole weekend and what I've been chirping on, if you've been listening to this as soon as I started this podcast in March, you know I've been asking for Chase Meidroth to be starting for the White Sox because he's exactly what the White Sox needed, a spark plug, a guy who gets on base. And his defense has been solid. What he did on Friday was his major league debut. All he did, got to the plate 4 times, got on base 4 times, walked 3 times, and got a single. Scored 2 runs on Friday. And this is not a coincidence that they scored all these runs on Friday when Chase Meidroth got into the game. He walked 3 times, saw all those pitches, and then when it was time to put bat to ball, you saw the kid do it for his first major league hit, a hard, sharp single to right field just past the first baseman's glove. He knows how to hit. He knows how to get on base. And the one thing the White Sox have been struggling with for years now is having players that understand how to get on base, either via the walk or getting on base via the hit. And we'll have more from Chase Meidroth as I finish this recap of the weekend. But that is exactly what you need to see on Friday. You come back licking your wounds from an 8 losses in a row. You're the laughing stock of baseball because they saw how you lost versus Cleveland, the walk-off loss where you got tagged out, and Mike Tauchman is hurt now on the IL, who's like ready to score the tying run in that game. Everybody's laughing at you again. And everybody's like, oh, here we go. Here we go. Even myself, if you're listening to my show this past Friday, said the same. I said this White Sox team looks no different than the team that just finished with 121 losses in 2024. Hey, something happened. And that thing that happened is Chase Meidroth. I think that you give a boost to the team by promoting people who deserve to be on the major league club. Now, was he having service time manipulation performed on him by the White Sox? Of course. Friday was the first day that players like himself could not accrue a service time year if they came up right then. And so the White Sox held him down as long as they could. And you can definitely tell that they did that because as soon as he came up, they sent Greg Jones back down. Then Greg Jones had to come back up because there was an injury to Austin Slater that happened on Friday night, I believe. And so you could tell that Greg Jones didn't even play until I think Sunday, where he stole a base. And he's got excellent speed. So you can tell that when they brought Greg Jones up initially and he didn't play at all and then was sent back in 2 days, right when Chase Meidroth came up, and then they had to go back and get him, you say, oh, yeah, they could have had Chase Meidroth at that time when they picked up Greg Jones on, I think it was Wednesday night. But instead, they're like, nah, we're going to wait a couple more days and let Chase Meidroth debut at home and gain an extra year of his service time. So it's shameful. I don't like it, but I love that the kid is up here because you can see he gets things going. And not only with the bat, if you're watching on Friday, he had a nice slick double play started where he's backhanding while going to his right. He's playing second base, backhanding while going to his right, catches the ball with his glove, flips it to his hand, his bare hand, underhand throws to the shortstop right on target, and starts the double play there to end the inning. And he's looking real smooth out there in defense. Played second base on Friday. Saturday, switched over to shortstop. I saw no ill effects there. And I think he played a little bit more shortstop today on Sunday as I'm recording this after the White Sox did lose. So he is what I exactly envisioned him to be. Should have been up at the team at the beginning of the season. And I had people, when I was tweeting this on Friday, get at me. He would have made a difference. They would have had the same exact record, Herb. They would have had the same 2-10 record if Chase Meidroth was on his team. No, they wouldn't. Getting on base scores you more runs, as you saw on Friday and the subsequent days. He gets on base at a good clip, and if you get on base more, you cause more havoc with the pitcher. You make the pitcher go out of the stretch, go out of the stretch instead of the windup, and it's a different ball game when you get people a little off of their game. Since you have Jacob Amaya, you can relax a little bit. Now we know he has 6 hits on the year instead of the 3 I gave him for the other day. He's been hot. He's got 3 hits this weekend. So I think that Chase Meidroth is exactly what the White Sox need. They need to bring up some other players that deserve that promotion in Edgar Caro and maybe even Kyle Teel, even though Kyle Teel is not hitting how well he was early in the year. So let's go to Sunday or Saturday. 3-2 game. The White Sox win that game. Martin Perez struggled for the most part. Only 4 2/3. He gave up 2 runs on 5 hits, 4 walks, 5 Ks, and only 50 of his 91 pitches were for strikes. He couldn't get out former White Sox great Romy Gonzalez. He started the game off with a walk to Romy Gonzalez. The next time he saw Romy Gonzalez, another walk. And in the 5th inning, Romy Gonzalez gets an RBI single to chase Martin Perez from that game. He just couldn't get out of the 5th. It was a tough inning. I think he started off with a triple. Then another guy singled in a run. Rafael, I believe, singled in a run. And then you get the Romy Gonzalez RBI single to chase Martin Perez. So you get that outing out of him. Not ideal, but on the year, he's got a sub-2 ERA with a 1.59. You'll take that. That's a guy that is doing well above where you expected him to be after 3 starts for the Chicago White Sox. And finally, I railed on him on Friday. You heard it. Luis Robert Jr. He showed up on Saturday to the ballpark ready to go. Because in the 6th inning, he hit a tying home run with Vargas on first base. He hit a tying home run to right center field for his first home run of the year. Yay! Luis Robert Jr. finally. Yay! Showing some power, showing some intuitiveness. He's showing some actual skills that he has on the offensive side. Yay! Then in the 9th inning, Luis Robert Jr. going against one of the best closers in the history of baseball. And Aroldis Chapman, who is now a Boston Red Sox closer, was 2 for 2 in his closing situations up till that point. It was an actual save situation, so that's why you saw the erratic action from Aroldis Chapman. Starts the inning off with a walk, and then subsequently steals second base. He's been doing that very well. He's been stealing crisp. I don't think he's getting caught this year. I think he's got 6 or 7 steals already on the year. That has been excellent. And then Luis Robert scores the winning run on Brooks Baldwin's RBI single, and the White Sox walk off the Boston Red Sox on Saturday 3-2 to grab the series for the first series win of the season. 2 wins in a row versus Boston. And man, if you looked on Twitter or Blue Sky, by the way, you can follow me on Twitter at Ecknerwall23. That's my last name, Herb Lawrence, ECNERWAL 23 on Twitter, or you can go to Blue Sky, which is just my regular name, herblawrence.bsky.social, and follow me there. If you look at both those socials, Boston fans were apoplectic. How can we lose to this crappy team? We come to this city and they lose 8 in a row, and then they grab 2 versus us. This is terrible. The Boston Red Sox are done. They were 7-9 at the time. Just very, very sad at the time. I was like, hey, perspective, guys. Yes, you did lose to the worst team in baseball, a team that had a worst record in baseball history last year, but also you're 7-9. Pump those brakes a little bit. So I was eating those Boston Red Sox tears because there's a couple teams I do not enjoy, and Boston Red Sox and their fans are one of those teams that I do not enjoy at all and never want them to have a second of happiness, except for when those former White Sox play, like on Sunday when Garrett Crochet took the bump versus the Chicago White Sox. Let's get to that marquee pitching matchup that lived up to the hype. I'm going to get to Garrett Crochet in a second, but let's talk about our guy, Shane Smith, in his 3rd ever Major League start. Mercy. I tell you what. All right. White Sox versus Carmines, Pale Hills versus Carmines. I'll tell you what. Hawk Harrelson's dream. Shane Smith, 6 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 3 Ks. Mercy. Grab some bench. 50 of his 79 pitches were strikes, and he has a season ERA after his 3 starts in the major leagues of 2.04. Just ran out of gas. Again, I was at his first start, did the same thing, cruising through the lineup, killing the Minnesota Twins. And then he got to 5 2/3 in the 6th inning and just lost his control and didn't have it anymore. Kind of the same thing happened here in the 6th inning again versus the Boston Red Sox, where he's cruising and then he gets to that 6th inning, gets 2 outs and can't find the plate. And then when he does, the Boston Red Sox do damage versus him. And I'll get to how he gave up those 2 runs in that inning. And he did get the loss in this game because of one of the players against him just going off and getting all the runs driven in. But I'll get to that in a second. But let's get to Garrett Crochet. That man had a mission. He's usually great. We saw him last year turn in from reliever the years before, often injured, Tommy John years before, to 2024, him putting it all together, becoming an all-star, and then having that stuff that was just so filthy. And in the second half, we saw a limited version of him because the White Sox were trying to tamp down his innings as to keep him preserved for a trade like they did with him later on in December when they traded him to the Boston Red Sox. But he came out with a mission to not let the White Sox do anything versus him. And he almost achieved that mission, went into the 6th inning with a perfect game. And it was only broken up by a walk by Brooks Baldwin to start off that 6th inning. You could tell he was frustrated himself that he didn't execute his pitches correctly because, he sees Brooks Baldwin on the other side of the plate. And he's like, he can hit a little bit, but, if I'm on my game over. Nobody in the major leagues can hit me. And so he was kind of frustrated with himself. And then he takes a no-hitter into the 8th inning. And of course, if you had to guess one player on the Chicago White Sox roster that would get a hit versus Garrett Crochet, you're right. It's the guy we talked about already, Chase Meidroth, one of the guys he was traded for in that December trade I just spoke about, Chase Meidroth, goes to left field with with a single to break up the no-hitter that Garrett Crochet was trying to go for right there. And then Chase eventually goes around and scores, and that run is charged to Garrett Crochet. So his final line was 7 innings, 7 and third innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk, and 11 strikeouts in his 7 and third innings. He was just out there, fastball, cutter, change, slider, filthy, 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 filthy. And if you're a White Sox fan, you know when he's on his game, it's very hard for people to hit him. Since he's established that cutter, he's kept left-handed hitters and right-handed hitters at bay. They can't be diving for his slider because it comes out of the same slot, and that slider is a little low, less miles per hour, and it's cutting at your knees. And if you're trying to, barrel that up like a couple right-handers did last year, it's going to be trouble when that's a cutter and it's on the inside edge of the strike zone and you're striking out. So he's worked on his repertoire ever since last year, and he seems like he's even more sharp now as a Boston Red Sox. I want him to do well for the Boston Red Sox, only when he doesn't play the White Sox, which I think his next start will also against these very same Chicago White Sox, but in Boston. But the player that did damage against Shane Smith was Trevor Story. He hit a home run late, but the thing I want to get to is how in the 6th inning, Shane Smith was messed up by both his right fielder and the Chicago White Sox organization as a whole. It was a windy day, so I'm going to give this caveat to Brooks Baldwin before I even start. Windy day. But the White Sox haven't learned their lesson on multiple fronts. They haven't learned their lesson on playing players that are obviously hurt before they're 100% healed up, like you saw with Mike Tauchman, who came back from a hamstring pull, only to come back and get a hamstring pull, like I just talked about when he was trying to round the bases from third, going home and getting thrown out by 25 plus feet in Cleveland for the walk-off loss on Wednesday. And the other thing that they 100% haven't learned from their past is playing infielders in the outfield, especially at right field. We've seen that with Gavin Sheets in the past. We've seen that with Andrew Vaughn in the past. And now it was Brooks Baldwin's turn. Any everyday normal right fielder who's played right field at a pretty good clip in his major league career pretty much is a can of cornball. It's traveling, it's blowing, the wind's blowing, but what right fielders and most outfielders know is that you get to the wall first and then you adjust to where the ball is. If you can't locate the ball initially, or you don't know where the ball is eventually going to go, you get to the wall and then you adjust to where the ball is at. And Brooks was just drifting with the ball, and he was there. The ball was right there, and you see him lunge at the ball instead of being camped under that ball and catching the ball, which would have been the last out in the 6th inning and helped your starting pitcher in Shane Smith escape that jam he had in the 6th inning with no runs scored. That's the problem, though. You have an inexperienced player playing out of position once again, not out of necessity. They have plenty of right fielders, plenty of people who can play right field for them. Is Brooks Baldwin that good? He has to play right field? No, not at all. But I see what they wanted to do where they're getting starts for Chase Meidroth either at shortstop or second base, and they got to still play Lenine somewhere. And then they somehow, some way, they got to play Jacob Amaya at shortstop. So like Brooks, hey, you're the most versatile of these guys, so you get your ass out to right field. It's not that hard. It is that hard. Brooks Baldwin's finding that out. Right field is no thing when you're a little leaguer, they put the worst player out there in right field just because no one's going to hit the ball to right field because the players don't have that opposite field power when they're kids. But guess what? Players got opposite field power Trevor Story has that, and they can hit it the right field. It is just as an important position as left field, as center field. You need to have a professional out there that does the job on a regular basis, and the White Sox seem to not understand this, and they continue to do the same old thing and throwing anybody out there in right field and thinking they're fine. Every year, negative WAR is coming out the right field for the White Sox. One of the worst right field positions in the last 5 to 10 years is because the White Sox just throw anybody out there and think they'll be fine, and it's costing them runs. And today, it cost them the game because those 2 runs that scored in the 6th inning were the difference. And then, as I said, Trevor Story hit a home run later in the game to put it out of distance. His 3 runs were the distance where all the Boston Red Sox scored today. 3-1 victory for the Carmines out there. So the White Sox, positive. Take 2 out of 3 from Boston Red Sox. That's good. Negative, they keep on doing the same dumbass stuff, especially in the outfield. Get your stuff together and learn from your mistakes, White Sox. New manager, doesn't matter. New general manager in the last couple of years, doesn't matter. Same dumbass mistakes. It's organizational. It's systemic. It's dumb. So let me move on to what we're just talking about as far as Garrett Crochet and revisit what happened there and how I feel about it. Initially, when the White Sox were shopping Garrett Crochet in the middle of last year, I was like, why? He's young. He just started being a championship pitcher, like started this 2024, and he looked crisp. His arm looked fresh. They seemed like they had a plan for him to keep him healthy. Why don't you just work out a long-term extension with him? I'm sure he would be more than willing to stay here as a Chicago White Sox as a now 25-year-old hurler. Nah, the White Sox were not interested in him staying for their team. They wanted to get something for him, so they traded him to Boston, just like they traded Chris Sale to Boston, a left-hander in his prime or before his prime in Garrett Crochet's case, and got back 4 players. I thought at the initial trade that getting Brady Montgomery, Kyle Teal, Wickelman Gonzalez, and Chase Meidroth, great trade. Awesome trade. So that's kind of where I changed my tone about trading Garrett Crochet because the return was so overwhelmingly good for the White Sox. Yeah, Garrett Crochet is going to be a top-tier starting pitcher in this league. And if you didn't hear last episode or haven't been paying attention to baseball in general, Garrett Crochet has already signed an extension with the Boston Red Sox. I believe it is 6 years for $170 million. So my inclination about him wanting to sign an extension was right. You just got to put the money in front of him and let him sign on the dotted line. The White Sox, as you know, are a cheap team, and Jerry Reinsdorf definitely won't sign a pitcher past 4 years of on a contract because he's never done that. The longest he's given is John Danks, and a couple other people have gotten 4-year contracts in their careers. But the players they got back, when I saw Chase Meidroth and what he did last year for the Paw Sox, got on base at a 430 clip, I was like, that's exactly the players that the White Sox kind of need. Kyle Teal, same thing. He split his time between AA and AAA, had an awesome year. Catcher, versatile guy, a perfect White Sox. So left-handed bat is especially sore and what the White Sox need. Not necessarily a power bat, but a guy who can put bat to ball and do some damage. I want him on the major league team too. And then you get Braden Montgomery, a guy that I wanted the White Sox to draft instead of Hagen Smith, who they eventually drafted with the 5th pick overall. Braden Montgomery went to the 12th pick, which was the Boston Red Sox last year, was hurt the whole year pretty much right before the College World Series. He got hurt at Texas A&M. But before that, he was having a top season where many were suggesting and thought that he would be projected to be a top 5 draft pick last year. So to get that type of talent in your organization, I was all for it. And Braden Montgomery starting up his professional career down there, I think in Kannapolis right now, and he's crushing. He's having a great time down there. He's had a multiple hit game today Sunday as I tape this. He's doing the job, and I haven't checked on Wickelman Gonzalez, but people gush about the stuff that he has. And if he gets his hands, or Brian Bannister and Ethan Katz get their hands on him, he's going to develop into something special. So they got 4-for-1 special. At minimum, 3 of those guys are going to be in the major leagues in the not too distant future. You're going to see Kyle Teal not too long from now, hopefully. And then Braden Montgomery will probably be here in a year or 2. So getting 3 major league starters and 1 that might be a major league player eventually was a win. I will root on Garrett Crochet for the rest of his career because he was a good player for the White Sox. He bided his time. He advocated for himself. He wanted to start, and he got his chance, and he absolutely crushed it with the White Sox in 2024, even though the White Sox had a horrible record. I'm glad that he's got his paper, 6 years of $170 million, and he will do some great things. But I think the 4 players the White Sox got back from him will eventually prove out to be better than what Garrett Crochet would have done here for the White Sox. Not to say that Jerry Reinsdorf and Chris Getz were right to trade him. It was only their miserly ways that made them trade him. But I think eventually in the long run, it will be the results being favorable for the White Sox to balance out this Boston to Chicago thing, especially trading left-handed starters, because the last time we got so pantsed in the Chris Sale for Yohan Moncada and Michael Kopech and Brian Flette or whoever they got back, Luis Basabe. I'm mixing up my White Sox and Cubs trades with my Boston Red Sox White Sox trades. But that's neither here nor there. So that was my feelings on that. And the last thing I got for you before we wrapped up with this episode, and really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions you want to send on to Addison to 35th, it's just that. Addison235th at gmail.com. Addison235th at gmail.com. Myself or Ryan Herrera will answer those questions either in the email itself, or if it's good enough, we'll show it right here on the broadcast. Haven't got any good enough questions yet for the broadcast to hear. So Addison the 35th at Gmail if you want to be here on this broadcast. I do 2 shows a week, usually at the end of series. So I'll do one today after the Bo Sox series, and I'll do one on Thursday afternoon or night after the White Sox play the Sacramento A's. And yes, I'm calling them the Sacramento A's, even though they don't want to be called that. They just want to be called the Athletics. You move to Sacramento, I'm going to call you what city you're representing. Don't be ashamed of where you're representing. You're going to be there for 3 years. So the White Sox will host the Sacramento A's Tuesday through Thursday. I'll have the post game after Thursday's game, and hopefully the White Sox can win 2 series in a row, because I don't see the Sacramento A's holding this White Sox team down, especially with the pitchers they're throwing. Now, Jeffrey Springs, solid pitcher. He'll start on Tuesday. A lefty starter for the Sacramento A's. He'll go against our starting pitcher, Sean Burke. Wednesday, we have Osvaldo Bido versus Jonathan Cannon. And on Thursday, it'll be J.P. Sears versus our guy, Dart Davis Martin. So I will see you after that series ends. If we don't see Chase Meidroth go higher than 6 in the lineup, you'll hear me yell about that, because while I love that he's in the major leagues, hitting him 6 with a lineup that doesn't get on base makes no goddamn sense. Will Venable has to get his stuff together and realize you put people who get on base at the top of the lineup, so the people behind him, when he gets on base, can move him over and move him in. Baseball 101 for you, Will Venable. I know you went to Princeton, but I don't know if they taught you baseball there, because if they did, you're not showing it. Come on now. I got faith in you, my man, but you got to get your stuff together. So that will do it for Addison the 35th for today. My name is Herb Lawrence. Follow me on Twitter, Ecknerwall23. That's ECNERWAL23 for Robin Ventura, or on Blue Sky. That's Herb Lawrence, Lawrence with the W, .bsky.social. And remember, email us at Addison235th@gmail.com. So for Ryan Herrera, who covers the Cubs here, I'm Herb Lawrence. I'll see you later on Addison to 35th.